Negative thoughts can be like chains, holding you back from becoming the person you're meant to be. I know that struggle all too well. For years, I let doubt, fear, and negativity control my mind, and it felt like I was trapped in a never-ending loop of frustration. But then I discovered Stoicism, and everything changed. The ancient Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, developed a powerful framework for dealing with life's challenges, especially when it comes to crushing negative thinking. They understood that your thoughts shape your reality, and by mastering your mind, you can break free from the grip of negativity. In this video, I'm going to share 8 Stoic laws that helped me turn my mindset around and, more importantly, stay in control no matter what life throws at me. These principles aren't just about silencing negativity, they're about transforming it into inner strength. The last few lessons in particular had the most profound impact on me, and I believe they'll do the same for you. Let's get started. 1. Master your reactions. Learning to master your reactions is one of the most empowering skills you can develop, and it's central to Stoicism. For years, I struggled with reacting to situations emotionally, whether it was frustration, anger, or anxiety. It seemed as if external events controlled me, and whenever something didn't go my way, my emotions took over. I would snap, withdraw, or fall into a negative spiral that often left me drained and powerless. Stoicism teaches that we may not control what happens to us, but we can always control how we respond. The ancient Stoic Epictetus put it simply, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This principle was a game changer for me. It allowed me to reclaim control over my life and stop being a victim of circumstance. But how do you actually master your reactions in a world filled with stressors? Tony Robbins teaches that our emotional states determine our actions. If you're in a state of fear or frustration, the actions you take will reflect that, leading to poor outcomes. Conversely, if you are calm and centered, your responses will be more rational and productive. The first step is recognizing that emotional reactions are just that, reactions, not facts. Emotions are temporary, and when we pause before reacting, we give ourselves space to choose a better response. A key technique I've used to master my reactions is changing my physiology. Robbins often talks about how changing your physical state can change your mental state. When I feel stress or frustration rising, I adjust my posture, take deeper breaths, or even engage in a quick physical activity like walking or stretching. This simple change in body language triggers a shift in my emotional state, helping me stay calm and respond more thoughtfully. Another method I've found useful is focusing on gratitude. When negative emotions arise, I redirect my focus by thinking about something I'm genuinely grateful for, no matter how small. This immediately disrupts the emotional spiral and reminds me that, despite the challenges, there are positive aspects to focus on. Mastering your reactions doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. It means acknowledging them, understanding their source, and choosing a more constructive response. It's about breaking the cycle of impulsive reactions that often lead to regret, and instead creating a space where you can act with intention. Over time, this practice strengthens your emotional resilience, and you become less reactive to external events that would have once thrown you off course. Master your reactions, and you'll find yourself navigating life with far more control and confidence, no longer at the mercy of whatever comes your way. 2. Accept the uncontrollable. For much of my life, I wasted an enormous amount of energy trying to control things that were completely outside my influence, whether it was the behavior of others, the outcomes of certain events, or even random inconveniences like bad weather. I felt anxious, frustrated, and powerless whenever things didn't go according to plan. It wasn't until I embraced the Stoic principle of accepting the uncontrollable that I began to experience real peace and freedom. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the distinction between what we can control and what we can't. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It sounds simple, but putting it into practice requires a significant mindset shift. The moment I stopped trying to control external events and instead focused on my inner state, my thoughts, actions, and reactions, everything changed. Tony Robbins often emphasizes that trying to control the uncontrollable only leads to stress and frustration. He says that when you focus on what you can't control, you enter a negative emotional state, and from that state, you make poor decisions. This couldn't be more true. When I was stuck in that mindset, it felt like I was constantly fighting an uphill battle, whether it was trying to change someone's opinion of me, worrying about market conditions I couldn't influence, or stressing over the future. The breakthrough came when I fully internalized that my energy is far better spent on what I can control, my efforts, my mindset, and how I choose to respond to any given situation. This shift in focus not only reduced my anxiety, but also empowered me to take more effective action. For example, instead of obsessing over whether or not a client would sign a contract, I focused on delivering the best pitch I could and being prepared for any outcome. The result? More peace and, ironically, better outcomes. Stoicism teaches that life is unpredictable, and the more we try to control every outcome, the more frustrated we become. The real power lies in focusing on our responses to whatever life throws our way. Tony Robbins uses an analogy about how athletes, top performers, and even billionaires succeed. They don't waste time on things outside their control. They focus their energy on mastering themselves and their actions. One practice that has helped me in accepting the uncontrollable is the use of daily affirmations rooted in Stoic philosophy. Each morning, I remind myself that there will be things outside my control today, and that's okay. I focus on the actions I can take and how I can show up in the world, regardless of the circumstances. Over time, this practice has not only made me more resilient, but also much more content. By accepting the uncontrollable, you liberate yourself from the constant frustration of unmet expectations. You learn to flow with life rather than fight against it, and in doing so, you unlock a deeper sense of peace and inner strength. 3. Focus on present action. One of the most powerful Stoic principles I've learned is the importance of focusing on present action. In the past, I was constantly consumed by worries about the future or regrets about the past. This mental chatter kept me from being fully engaged in the present, where real progress happens. It took time, but I eventually realized that the only moment I can truly control is the present one, and that's where all the power lies. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, stressed the significance of focusing on what's in front of you. In Meditations, Marcus wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last act of your life." This is a powerful reminder to bring your full attention and effort to whatever you're doing in the moment. Whether it's a major life decision or a small daily task, acting with intention in the present moment leads to much better outcomes. For years, I let my mind race ahead to possible future problems or dwell on past mistakes. This habit kept me stuck in inaction because my energy was spread too thin. I would worry about the outcome of a project before even starting it, or I'd overanalyze a conversation that happened weeks ago, wondering what I could have said differently. The result? I was paralyzed by indecision and self-doubt. Focusing on present action means letting go of the what-ifs and should-haves. It's about recognizing that the only thing that truly matters is the action you're taking right now. When I started practicing this, everything shifted. I found that when I fully committed to what I was doing in the moment, whether it was writing, exercising, or having a conversation, I not only performed better, but I also experienced far less anxiety. Tony Robbins talks about the importance of changing your state to shift your focus. By directing your energy toward the present, you can break the cycle of fear and worry that often leads to poor decisions. Robbins emphasizes that by taking decisive action in the present, you build momentum, and that momentum keeps you moving forward. To apply this principle, I've developed a habit of regularly checking in with myself throughout the day, asking, am I fully engaged in this moment? If the answer is no, I take a deep breath, reset my focus, and remind myself that this is where my power lies, in the present. I've also stopped multitasking, as it dilutes the quality of my efforts. Now I tackle one task at a time, giving it my full attention. By focusing on present action, you become more effective, more at peace, and more aligned with your goals. You'll stop wasting energy on things you can't control, and instead harness the power of the present to create real change in your life. 4. Detach from external validation. For the longest time, I sought approval from others. Whether it was praise from colleagues, likes on social media, or recognition from family, my sense of self-worth was tied to how others perceived me. If I didn't receive validation, I felt like a failure. But Stoicism taught me one of the most liberating lessons. True contentment comes from within, not from external validation. Epictetus, a prominent Stoic philosopher, said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." This statement resonates deeply when it comes to the desire for approval. The more we crave validation from others, the more we hand over control of our happiness to external forces. The Stoics understood that external validation is fleeting and unreliable. What truly matters is how we perceive ourselves and whether we're living in alignment with our values. Letting go of the need for external validation was a huge challenge for me. I had built much of my identity around external feedback, whether it was positive or negative. If I received praise, I felt on top of the world, but if I was criticized, my confidence would crumble. This emotional roller coaster was exhausting, and it prevented me from living authentically. Stoicism teaches that our self-worth should come from internal validation, knowing that we are acting in accordance with our values and principles. When I started focusing on this, everything changed. Instead of seeking approval from others, I began setting my own standards of success. I asked myself, am I proud of the effort I'm putting in? Am I staying true to what I believe in? These questions helped me anchor my self-worth in something stable, my own sense of integrity. Tony Robbins often talks about the trap of seeking external validation. He explains that when you base your happiness on the opinions of others, you put your emotional well-being in their hands. Robbins emphasizes the importance of building an internal foundation where your sense of worth isn't swayed by external opinions. This concept aligns perfectly with Stoicism. To detach from external validation, I started journaling daily, reflecting on whether my actions aligned with my values. Instead of seeking praise, I focused on doing things that mattered to me. This shift helped me break free from the constant need for approval, and over time, I became more confident in myself, regardless of what others thought. By detaching from external validation, you'll find a sense of freedom and inner peace that can't be shaken by outside opinions. You'll stop chasing approval and start living a life that feels true to who you are, and that is where real strength comes from. 5. Embrace discomfort. One of the core principles of Stoicism is the willingness to embrace discomfort. We live in a world where comfort is often the ultimate goal. Everything from technology to lifestyle encourages ease and convenience. But Stoicism teaches the opposite, that true growth comes from stepping outside your comfort zone and deliberately facing challenges. I used to avoid discomfort at all costs, whether it was difficult conversations, physical challenges, or emotional vulnerability. I would shy away from anything that felt uncomfortable. But I soon realized that by avoiding discomfort, I was also avoiding growth. Stoicism opened my eyes to the idea that discomfort is not something to be feared. It's a tool for self-improvement. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote about the concept of voluntary discomfort. He advised practicing discomfort in small, controlled ways so that when life inevitably throws larger challenges our way, we're better equipped to handle them. For example, he suggested occasionally eating simple food or sleeping on the floor to remind oneself that luxury is not a necessity and that we are capable of enduring hardships. I began to incorporate this idea into my daily life. I would take cold showers, fast for a day, or push myself to work out harder than usual. At first, it felt uncomfortable and even a little pointless. But over time, I noticed that these small acts of voluntary discomfort built mental resilience. I was training myself to handle adversity with more grace and strength. When bigger challenges appeared, whether it was a difficult work project or a personal setback, I found myself less rattled and more prepared to face them head-on. Tony Robbins often speaks about the necessity of challenging yourself to grow. He argues that in order to become strong, you have to face resistance, much like a muscle grows stronger through physical strain. Robbins' teachings align with Stoic philosophy in that both emphasize the importance of discomfort as a catalyst for growth. The beauty of embracing discomfort is that it shifts your mindset from avoiding pain to accepting it as part of the process. Instead of dreading the challenges life throws your way, you begin to see them as opportunities for growth. Over time, this mindset makes you stronger, more resilient, and far less fearful of the inevitable difficulties that life presents. When you make a habit of embracing discomfort, you develop an inner fortitude that prepares you for whatever life may throw at you. You realize that discomfort is temporary, but the strength it builds is lasting. This mindset change will not only help you crush negative thinking, but also empower you to face life with courage and confidence. 6. Use reason to overcome fear. Fear is a natural part of life. We all experience it, whether it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, or fear of the unknown. But Stoicism teaches that fear doesn't have to control us. The Stoics believed that by using reason and rational thinking, we could overcome our fears and make better decisions. For years, I let fear dictate my actions. I avoided risks, stayed in my comfort zone, and allowed my mind to be consumed by worst-case scenarios. I was constantly anxious about what could go wrong, which kept me from pursuing opportunities and achieving my full potential. It wasn't until I embraced the Stoic approach of using reason to combat fear that things began to change. Epictetus taught that it's not the things themselves that scare us, but our judgments about them. Fear is often a product of our mind, created by imagining outcomes that haven't even happened yet. When I began applying reason to my fears, I realized that most of the things I was afraid of were either exaggerated in my mind or entirely outside of my control. Tony Robbins also talks about the importance of shifting focus when dealing with fear. He explains that our brains are wired to focus on potential threats as a survival mechanism, but that in modern life, this often leads to unnecessary anxiety. Robbins suggests that by asking better questions, such as, "What's the best that could happen?" instead of, "What's the worst that could happen?" we can reframe our fears and see them for what they really are, opportunities for growth. To overcome fear with reason, I started breaking down my fears logically. I would ask myself, what's the actual worst-case scenario here? How likely is it to happen? And if it does happen, can I handle it? More often than not, I found that my fears were either unrealistic or something I could manage if they came to pass. This process of rational analysis helped me detach from the emotional grip of fear and allowed me to act with more confidence. Using reason to overcome fear doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. Instead, it's about acknowledging your fears, but not letting them drive your decisions. When you confront your fears with logic, you take away their power and regain control over your life. By consistently applying reason in moments of fear, you can transform how you approach challenges. You'll find that fear loses its hold on you, allowing you to act boldly and with clarity. This Stoic principle has been one of the most valuable tools in my life for overcoming negative thinking and living fearlessly. 7. Develop emotional resilience. Emotional resilience is the ability to remain calm and composed in the face of adversity. Stoicism emphasizes this skill, teaching that our emotions are within our control and that we can train ourselves not to be overwhelmed by them. For years, I let my emotions dictate my reactions. I would get angry, frustrated, or anxious at the slightest inconvenience, and my mood would spiral from there. But the Stoic approach taught me that emotional resilience isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about learning how to manage them constructively. The Stoics believed that while emotions like fear, anger, and sadness are natural, they don't have to control our behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the importance of self-mastery, urging us to maintain inner peace no matter what chaos is happening around us. This resonated deeply with me. I realized that I was giving away my power every time I allowed my emotions to control my actions. Tony Robbins speaks about emotional resilience as well. He talks about how our emotions shape our state of mind, and that learning to control our emotions leads to better decisions and more productive outcomes. Robbins teaches that we can interrupt emotional patterns by changing our focus and physiology, which aligns with Stoic principles of mindfulness and conscious reaction. To build emotional resilience, I began practicing mindfulness. Whenever I felt overwhelmed by emotions, I paused and took a few deep breaths, giving myself space to think before reacting. I also started journaling, writing down what I was feeling and why helped me understand the triggers behind my emotional responses. This reflection allowed me to separate the emotion from the event and approach it more rationally. Over time, I developed the ability to respond rather than react. Instead of flying off the handle when things didn't go my way, I became more patient and thoughtful. I could see the bigger picture and understood that most setbacks were temporary. This shift made me less prone to stress and anxiety and more capable of handling difficult situations with grace. Emotional resilience is like a muscle. The more you work at it, the stronger it becomes. By practicing emotional awareness and applying Stoic principles, you can train yourself to stay grounded, even in the face of life's greatest challenges. This is one of the most valuable skills you can develop, as it not only helps you crush negative thinking, but also enables you to maintain clarity and composure in any situation. 8. Let go of attachments. Stoicism teaches that attachment to external things, whether it's material possessions, relationships, or outcomes, leads to suffering. The more we cling to these things, the more we fear losing them, and this fear creates anxiety and negative thinking. I struggled with this for a long time. I would get attached to specific outcomes, and when things didn't go as planned, I would feel crushed. Whether it was a job promotion I didn't get, a failed relationship, or a financial setback, my happiness was tied to external events beyond my control. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This quote was a game changer for me. I realized that my attachment to specific outcomes was the root of my suffering. By learning to let go of these attachments, I could free myself from the emotional roller coaster that came with unmet expectations. Tony Robbins also speaks about the dangers of attachment. He explains that when we tie our happiness to specific results, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Instead, Robbins encourages focusing on the process and enjoying the journey rather than being overly fixated on the end result. This is very much in line with Stoic thought, which emphasizes focusing on effort and action rather than outcomes. Letting go of attachments doesn't mean you don't care about things. It means you learn to detach from the outcome, understanding that you can only control your actions, not the results. I began applying this to different areas of my life. In my career, instead of obsessing over promotions or recognition, I focused on doing my best work. In my personal life, I learned to appreciate relationships for what they were in the present, rather than worrying about how they might change in the future. This mindset shift brought a sense of peace. When things didn't go the way I expected, I no longer felt devastated. I could accept the outcome with grace, knowing that I had done everything within my control. Letting go of attachments doesn't mean becoming indifferent. It means freeing yourself from the anxiety of holding on to things that aren't guaranteed. By releasing your grip on external outcomes, you free up mental and emotional space to focus on what truly matters: your growth, your effort, and your inner peace. This is one of the most liberating aspects of Stoicism and a powerful tool for crushing negative thinking.